Thank you for being here, and as per tradition, I'll hand it over to Vice Chair Seeger.
Well, good morning, all. This is the M&M Day, so we'll start with Ms. Cullinan, I think, first for Say Yes for Success.
So you want me over here?
We want you front and center.
Front and center? Oh, I can?
Yeah, that'll
Sure.
work.
Well, good morning, my friends.
Welcome.
I know you have a heavy topic today, so I thought I would make you smile seeing this green t-shirt. So thank you for having me. I think you all are aware, I just wanted to let you know that we did do the soft opening for the 2026 referendum team. Okay. We met a couple weeks ago. I thought you'd like to see this too. You know that we have them for each of our high schools, but this is what I had in my file. Just wanted to let you know, just a gist of where we are right now, what we're doing. We had our first meeting. We're gonna be meeting the third Tuesday of every month, United Way office, 4 o'clock. We're gonna do the same thing that we did before, where board members will shuffle through. Mark and Claudette were with us, so that was great. The team, pretty much everybody's back and who were here 4 years ago, okay? It was really an easy yes answer for them, which is awesome. So I'm super, super thankful. Sue Seifert, Jeff Brown is gonna be the treasurer again. Derek Rooney, our attorney. Tony's involved. The firm, I'm happy to say, Elizabeth and Maitland from the firm are back in. Let's see, Brian Farrow, really representing the West County and Inglewood side. Mike Riley's in, so
Well, it
he'll
was a pretty
be,
good list.
right, right? Philip Irick is in again. Of course, like I said, we have Mark and Claudette, and then I have our board members. We do have some new blood, which I'm excited about. One is sitting right back there, Gina, the president, she'll be representing the union, the teachers union. So that will be awesome to have her in there. Jackie Benjamin, some of you probably know Jacqueline Benjamin. Natalie Proctor from Lake Michigan Credit Union, we heard her yesterday. And Kristen Beverly, she's with the Board of Realtors for PGPCNP. Chamber people, like influencers in the community. That's who we're looking for. So happy to have them in. We're still reaching out. You have the timeline from 2022. We're going to be in your files from 3 years ago. We basically are just starting opening up right now. Okay, so we're getting our budget in place, we're getting our fundraising in place, we're opening our spreadsheets, we're taking a look at inventory, that type of thing, okay? Our plan is to basically do what we did last time, where we are everywhere, where we are positive, and where we are all saying one message. It seemed to work last time. We do have some interesting things coming, with us this go round. But that's where we come to you, getting the team together, but we come to you for your message. You've been there, done that, so we'll pull it together. We don't need it quite yet, but we are starting, like I said, to wear these little t-shirts and kind of.
Is Sue Seifert still on the team?
Yes, she is. Did I not
You
mention
just
her?
say so? Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Just wanted
of
to make sure,
course she
because I was
is.
thinking back that Sue was the person who did the messaging, so when we were talking about that.
Yep,
She
she
kind of
is.
helped with the,
Mhm.
I remember working with her on the FAQs last time.
Yes, and Claudette's gonna help us
Okay,
with that
good.
as well, and whomever else would like to. I had
Okay.
your name on that in 2022, and it was wonderful, so, like I said, we're still finalizing our committee roles. And I don't even really wanna call it a committee, and I don't even really wanna assign roles. It's really, it's the team, and everyone's gonna do everything, so, yeah. So I just wanted to let you know that we're back in, that you can call me, that there are steps that y'all need to take now, and, so you handle that end of it and get us a message, and we'll go out and try and raise that money again.
We certainly thank you for your willingness to participate yet again. It's above and beyond the call of duty, so we really do appreciate your willingness to dedicate your time, and confident it'll be as successful as our last go
I
round.
hope so.
So what you need from us is you need us to work on that resolution, right, and find the timeline for voting on that resolution.
Mhm.
And you need us to come up with a schedule for how we're gonna rotate through the meetings, and maybe Kristen can
It's Kristen,
help
I'm
us
gonna
with
meet
that.
with Kristen. And the initiatives, you know, you'll determine the initiatives that'll be on the ballot.
Okay, if we
Because,
change it, you mean,
yeah, if you
Okay.
decide to change.
okay,
And, you know, times have changed a little bit, so you might wanna change those initiatives. One thing we are doing, we've reached out to the FEA and Clearview, who did our polling for us, to see if they can do some initial polling now. So they're pulling,
she's raising her hand, so that's a yes, the FEA has committed?
oh, they committed
Okay.
to paying for it? Awesome. That's great. Hallelujah. That's wonderful. Okay, good. So because we requested them to do polling now, so we'll work with Mark on, part of the polling is to find out what the initiatives are that the people want. It's also to, because in 2026, the county's doing their 1 penny sales tax. So there's a tax there, and then we have our ad valorem tax.
And Inglewood
They'd
has an
both be
MTBSU.
renewing, pardon me?
And Inglewood has an MTBSU.
Yes, right?
I also
And then there's
understand the
another.
county, yeah, that they're doing
Yes.
that they've talked about having something called Conservation Charlotte, which
Correct.
they've done in the past. I haven't heard whether that's been decided or not.
And that's a 2 mil, isn't it? Yeah, Derek talked
The
about that.
Conservation Charlotte's 2 mills?
That's what I, don't quote me on
Okay.
that, okay? That's what I have in my notes, but
Okay.
Derek Rooney is on
Yeah,
top of that.
You would know.
So part of the polling was to see, get a feel for if we go hand in hand with the county in that and, you know, and work together on the messaging, or if, being separate would be better for us.
Polling, interesting information
It will be.
to feed off of.
The polling in 2022, when they did it 4 months prior to the election, they said we had the vote by 77%. We got Ian, okay, we got hit by Ian, and we got the vote at 77.47%. So the polling was really accurate. It's great. So,
Well, thank you, Marcia. We're glad you're running the team again, and you have a rock star team, and it sounds like you've added a couple more rock stars. So
Yep.
looking forward to going into this journey, especially because we know that it's going to be even more important for our students. You know, all of this obviously is about our students, and it's exciting to know that you know, we're going into that and trying to be proactive and positive through the whole messaging. So thank you very much.
any questions? Any other?
Just thank you so much.
All
I
right.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.
We are now
That's what you need from
Keep
us.
doing what you're doing. That really helps our job. So, all right, thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our budget workshop, I guess we'll turn to the superintendent first.
Okay, good morning, board, and I see Mr. Allen joining us at the table. Before he gets into his presentations, I'd like to share just a few opening thoughts and points. If you could please just put up on the screen here, but
For it to work. There we go.
where I would like to start is first by showing great appreciation to Mr. Allen and his team for all of their work. It's been a heavy lift, and they are doing a fantastic job. And it's a busy time of year for all of us, but I'd also like to point out Dr. McElroy and her HR team. Finance right now and HR, they're arriving early, they are staying late, and they're working all throughout the weekends to get ready for this school year. So I want to show appreciation to everything that their teams are doing. So we've talked about this publicly. Currently, we are sitting at right around a 15% unrestricted fund balance. And our estimates are, by the end of this year, will be around 10%. So we know that we have a discrepancy right now between revenues and expenditures. So our challenge as we go to build this year's budget is to balance two very important concepts. And the first is be able to provide a high-quality education for this year's group of students. We owe our students the very, very best that are attending our schools this year. So you see those bullet points up there. These are things that we've been talking about. They're in our strategic plan. How do we provide a year's worth of academic growth for all of our students, not some, all? We know education, part of education is preparing for what's next, self-discovery. So the implementation of our career planning guide, graduating positive or productive citizens, and continuing to build the talent pipeline. That's a strong return on investment for our community and for our students. So how do we balance that very important topic with also knowing that our reserves are going south and we need to reverse that trend and have our reserves start to build so that we can withstand tough financial times in the future. So trying to find the right balance on that is what our teams have been working on, and I will say that I'm very optimistic about the plan that we are putting together. It has been a true team effort. And so you'll hear some of that, what Marcus is going to get into, kind of currently what we're doing as far as building this year's budget, and also how we have some plans to increase our reserves as we build next year's budget as well. So with all that, Marcus, unless the board has any questions, I will turn it over to you.
Any questions? All right.
So just as a reminder, everyone knows that we have our budget hearing tonight at 5:30 in here. So kind of to start us off, like the superintendent mentioned, we need to make sure we're doing the best to balance our budget. We know right now we're in a deficit of about 9.5 million. As superintendent shared, we're entering this school year starting with a 15.1% fund balance, and our current projections show us ending at around the 10.1%. So it's important to include that the revenue is inclusive of, for this general fund, state, local, and some federal sources, primarily like ROTC comes in through there. But a big chunk of that is the referendum, which is about $35 million. So how do we get there? Expenditures are continuing to rise, obviously, inflation, insurance, utilities, and contracted services. Unfunded or partially funded legislative mandates. So FRS increases are always put on the employer, not the employee. I think it used to have no contributions on the employee side, but I think it was 2012, they did the 3% and it's maintained the 3% increase, same. So additionally, we have the increased student support and operational needs. So some of those are, use of deans, instructional coaches, security guards, those types of additional positions. But a big factor into our fund balance and the total picture is unexpected loss of prior year revenues, which in this case, we have some federal cuts from title programs, some family empowerment recalibration, and I'll get a little bit more into those in the upcoming slides here. So right now we have federal programs. June 30th, they held and paused all of our federal programs. Late last week, like as late as possible last week, like Friday at 4 o'clock, we got word that the freeze was stopped, and that disbursements and the funds should be, released at some point starting this week. As of right now, we haven't heard anything else. We haven't seen award letters or anything like that. So the numbers on here, I wanted to keep on here until we know, the full picture. Because as of right now, these were our estimates of what we had expected to receive if it wasn't paused. So there's no information. We know that the Title I allocation was never frozen. It was just reduced by $450,000. So our Title I was anticipated about $4 million. So we're still anticipating $3.5 million from that. But the title funds, because of the pause, they never talked about any reductions or anything like that. So we don't know if they're gonna reduce it or if it's gonna be the full amount or anything like that. But what we do know are the knowns here. So Title II through IV should be released. We just don't, sometime this week, hopefully. There was no mention of adult education at this point, so we don't think that is coming. But that brings us to a total impact of about $1.7 million that we have to do. So hopefully we get some information soon about what the award letters and things look like, but as of right now, we're kind of operating, once we get the information, we'll have it to be able to share.
Sorry, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask the questions as you go along the slides,
That's fine.
so that we don't have to like go back. The tentative budget that we're gonna see tonight then, does that not include that 1.72 then, or
Correct.
1.76?
Yeah, so
Okay.
on a normal year where there's no pauses, the tentative budget typically wouldn't include the federal programs anyway, because the award letters don't come out this soon. The Title I, a portion of it usually is, about 25% is typically available July 1. There's the application process that everybody has to submit, so typically anything in the federal programs, it's just 25% at most of what we are expecting to receive. But because of the uncertainty, we didn't put any of that in there to the federal programs because we didn't know yet at this year. We do have the portion of Title I in there, but that's it.
So
at this
when we
point.
say we have a $9.5 million shortfall,
Mhm.
when we get the award letters for that, will that reduce that $9.5 million shortfall?
Potentially, so it all depends on some of those strategic alignments of what we're doing with programs. Obviously, we want to preserve people and not software or stuff. So a lot of those positions have to be paid for, the people are already here. So a portion of it, was budgeted into the general fund for the people, but the other programs may not necessarily have been. So we have kind of a title plan that we've been working on, but now with this changing, once we get the more information, we'll be able to look at that. But it should result in a positive impact towards our fund balance at the end of the year. To what extent, we don't know until I get the award letters for sure to know what the dollar amount is, so.
But regardless, Title I has been reduced by $400,000.
Correct, and I believe the question was asked in the meeting that we had, and they had indicated that there's no other change to the Title I piece, but the meeting really wasn't about the Title I because that was never really frozen, it was just reduced, so.
And we're certainly adult education is not coming, or is it still in limbo?
There's been talks about the state potentially picking up a portion of it, and I've seen a number that the state has sent out, but it's not confirmed. They asked us to resend in the grant applications last week, and we did. But we haven't heard anything else at that point, so it's in limbo, and I'm not sure if it's gonna potentially come from the state side kicking in some money, or if adult ed might be coming back. There's just a lot of uncertainty as to what it is right now. The number that was shared with me was like $130,000. So it's obviously not the 340, but it's still uncertain if we'll get that, so. The next piece is kind of the family empowerment piece. So when we adopt the final budget, which is typically done the first or very early in September, we're required to use the second calc numbers from DOE for our projections. And they projected about $10.7 million would be withheld for family empowerment.
Marcus, can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
We talked about second calc, third calc,
Yeah.
fourth calc, and for people who maybe don't know what that means, would you
Sure.
mind taking a moment to explain that?
Yeah, so there's 4 different calculations done throughout the school year for the FEFP, which is the Florida Educational Funding for school districts. So the first calc is typically the legislative estimates that are done, usually on some lagging data, some historical trends. That's what goes into the legislative appropriations. The second calc is when they pull in the certified tax numbers, and then they should be basing it off of the final numbers from the previous year. The third calculation is done based on our October actual number of butts and seats is the easiest way to explain it. And then the fourth calc is based off of our February numbers. The different thing that occurred this year is we still haven't received a fourth calculation, so we don't know what a reconciliation is. So there's a big discrepancy normally it's pretty small between third and fourth calc. It's just kind of a true up number. So jumping from third calc to second calc, there's a larger discrepancy that we don't know what the in-between stage looks like yet. We're hoping that it's neutral or positive and not negative, because if it is negative, that would result in a prior period adjustment coming out, which could potentially reduce funding further. But hopefully that's not the case. Does that answer?
It does, and so when you create the budget
Mhm.
for this upcoming year, the one we're looking at, typically, we're using the fourth calculation from the state to see what our actuals are.
Correct.
And then that's how we're budgeting for the upcoming year. So we're not budgeting last year's budget, because that's kind of best guess.
Yep.
We're looking at actual numbers of students who are here or not here, because that's how our funding comes from the state.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, so the fourth calc normally contains that reconciliation. The third calc is close. So we kind of had to do, you'll notice in the budget book itself, that column you're probably talking about normally says 24-25 fourth calc.
Yep.
It says 24-25 estimated this time, because our estimate was, I had to use the third calc numbers and match those with the appropriate account lines to see what our actual dollars that we ended up with at the end is. So right now, we don't technically reconcile the third calc because there was the in-between period that we don't have the reconciliation sheet for yet. So it is a best guess. It'll probably change between now and the final budget. Hopefully, we have a fourth calc by then, so it's an exact, otherwise it's gonna be an estimate again, until we go through the audited financial statement period where, you know, the external auditors are actually telling us, yes, this is confirmed to be what your number is, so,
And that fourth calc then could impact the fund balance,
potentially,
but the actual FEFP run you're doing based on the second calculation,
correct.
right?
Yep,
Okay.
and that's per statute, so, you know, the second calc, we have to do that, that's what helps us set the millage rates, that's everything like that. The third calc should be the difference of what the best guess was by the state and where we ended up. But kind of to bring it back to this, you know, we were told with the second calc it was 10.7 and ended up being 12.7, so, you know, that was anticipated revenue of about $2 million. But in addition to that, we also had, there's a lot of different numbers on the sheet, and they're all proportionate. The weighting goes towards it and things like that, but the difference between the second and the third calc, we can't make up the difference with tax revenue. Year over year you can, and that's where the required local effort millage statutes come in, is it's always, if nothing changed to equal the exact same amount, that's how they set your required local effort. So when we're projecting that we're only gonna have a $10.7 million reduction of revenues for the empowerment scholarships, and it ended up being 12, that impacted the fund balance at the end of the year, that ended. It doesn't change the expenditure issue for this year, but it impacted our starting fund balance. So all that said, with the second calc, the 25-26 projections are showing a $15.4 million total for family empowerment that we're budgeting for as well. Lot of
I got
words.
questions, yeah.
Sorry.
So, you're saying that it reduced revenue, but I see it on the bottom line, like when I look at it, it's in parentheses, right? First you had 10.7 million, in parentheses as a negative, so an expenditure. And then in the third calc, it was a negative 12.7. But when I look on the revenue side, it shows from the second to the third that the FEFP actually increased from 121.5 million to 128.4 million.
So some of that is because what I'm speaking to specifically is the base allocation amount for the calculation of students. The other factors in there is like the safe school, the categorical pieces, you know, are included in that. The state funded discretionary supplements also in the budget, you know, at the
Are you talking
beginning
on
of
the
the
expense
year.
side or the revenue side?
The revenue side. So.
Right, so on that, so the revenue, I mean, did the revenue go up from 121.5 to 128.4?
It
Total
should,
FEFP revenue?
correct, it
Okay,
just went in different
So we increased revenue by
ways.
7 million.
Mhm.
But you're saying that we decreased by 2.
Specific to the family
scholarships.
empowerment.
So we're still +5 between the second and the third.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to like make sure that I'm understanding that, and then, and the reason that the FEFP went up between second and third, and I'm not saying this as a statement, by the way, this is more of a question. The reason that the FEFP went up between the second and the third is because the FTE count went up, right? It went up from 17,619 to 17,817.
Correct.
And what's the difference in scholarship students? Because I notice on another slide that you have, you're showing that for last year, we had 1,356 in the third
Yeah,
calculation, right?
when I get to that slide, I can look it up.
But so the 1,356 scholarship students is why 12.7 million was withheld, right?
Correct.
Now, when they forecast 10.7 million scholarships, how many students was that based on?
I don't have that number with me today.
Okay, so I went and I looked back at the presentation from the year before, and it showed 1,162 scholarships.
Okay.
So we went from 1,162 to 1,356, which was 194 students.
Okay.
And when I look at that difference in the FTE that we were funded on, that's a difference of 197 students. So it looks to me like our projection for like students in our schools was pretty much accurate. But it turned out that there were more scholarship students than what was forecast.
Correct.
But we did get more money for those scholarship students.
Correct. We just never received the revenue. They show on our books as anticipated revenue, but then they show out as an expenditure as well.
Right, but they don't, it seems like it's like a journal entry, right? It's not like they're putting, it's not like they
Yeah,
put
they don't
10
give
point,
it
they
to
didn't
us.
put 10.7 million into our bank account, and they didn't subtract 10.7 million from our bank account.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
so it's just a journal entry.
It-
That's why I guess,
Yeah,
you know,
if you
I
look
just,
at it,
I'm having a
sure.
really hard time understanding how we're minus $2 million when that money is actually not coming into our bank account or leaving our bank account. And when our revenue actually increased more
Yeah,
than what the minus $2 million is.
So part of it is all of the program weighting factors into that. Just because we had, 192 more students went to family empowerment doesn't mean that it was, a 1-for-1 exchange as far as that goes. The other factor is we had approximately 200 students that were duplicate counted in our case as well. So they received both scholarships and then we didn't get funded for those as well. So, that's where there is no document that goes throughout the school year that we can keep track of for the family empowerment scholarships till we get towards the end.
So,
When
you
we
know-
get the state number, that's when we know.
So I was looking at the slide that came from the financial officers organization. And this number's been quoted before where it says that the amount that the state awarded based on the empowerment scholarship FTE was $3 billion. And then exactly they describe here on this slide, you've probably seen this slide because it was probably in a presentation that you went to.
Yep.
So they describe exactly what you just talked about. And it shows that the total difference last year across the state for that problem you're talking about was $48 million. So does that mean that, is our 2 million part of that 48 million?
It's part of it. In addition to that is the fact that they also didn't pay out the very last payment to any of the schools. So it's kind of all inclusive of that. There's a lot of components that go into all of this.
Okay, because when I look at that minus 48 million, I'm like, wow, 2 million of that 48 million was us, that's like 4%. But I know that we don't have
Well, it's a portion of
4%
it,
of
so
the
that
students in
40,
the state.
but that 48 million that they're quoting is when they ran out of money after the second calibration. So it's probably more impactful to the state than the 48 million total. The 48 million was really just what was shorted to most of the districts. The difference is here, they moved the funding around where they increased in other areas to offset it. So some of it was, we still had the same amount of students, we just lost the double counting portion for it, where we didn't get it on our last payment, which is included in that total.
So explain that just a little bit further. So we had students whose families said, we're gonna do family empowerment this year.
Correct.
were paid by the state, and then at some point in the year came to our schools,
Correct.
we included them in our counts.
Yep.
And we did not receive payment for them to educate them because they'd already been paid by the state, is that?
That's correct.
So that's an additional part of that $2 million number.
So that figure then that we have, like it actually showed then, you know what I was saying is we had 197 more students in the FTE and 194 of those are scholarships. In reality, there weren't 194 scholarships, there were actually more students in our traditional schools then.
Correct. We had over 15,000 in our traditional schools, like
Even though it
physical.
14,882.
And we had to pay staff to educate those kids, and we did
Correct.
not receive
And
that.
that's where the discrepancy is because, you know, it's not a one for one always, right? So if the student enrolls the day after the count is done, we don't get credit for them. For the first count in October, we'd get half a credit for them the second half of the year. So it's not a exact science, I guess, for it. Like, truthfully, if they could look at every number of days that they were here, that would probably, you know, be a more exact number, but that would probably harm more districts because then it's truly based on your attendance rates versus were they present during the count period. But so there's multiple factors that are kind of going into the whole equation. And I know we're not the only district, many districts have it. Some districts actually were the opposite, where they were actually shorted money. And many districts were like us, where we had students here that the families did receive the funding as well. So the state is implementing some stuff that hopefully will help with that. That way they're not double counted. There's now a withdrawal code, there's a withdrawal form from the district, but that only affects if they're currently sitting in our district and then exiting. It doesn't help with anybody who's already in the empowerment program. So, but this will help us between the beginning of year projections and end of year projections, because we can make the adjustments over time. Our issue here was our student enrollment didn't go down. It stayed relatively flat. It was plus or minus like 20-ish. Depends on what random day you pick, right? Because kids come in and out all the time. We're plus or minus 20 from the beginning of the school to the end of the school year. But they said that 200 or 330 or something kids went to family empowerment. Because if you look at the difference between second and third calc for all other areas, traditional, charter, and virtual schools, they said it was a net zero. We didn't change anybody. So only the empowerment piece increased. And that's part of the whole FEFP picture. So yes, 128 million got put into there, but we didn't see all 128 million of it. It just shows on our, you know, revenues for it as well. And then we didn't get it all. So that's where
We got
it's.
some of it.
We got some of it,
Okay.
absolutely. We got some of it. But
You know, the good news is, I would say, is that our enrollment in our traditional schools is actually increasing. Unlike some other, you know, I was reading the Sarasota yesterday where their enrollment is down. They have an increase in scholarships and their enrollment in their schools is down.
yeah, Lake County is one that's really bad. I think they might be the worst off statewide. They're almost down 3,000 students year over year. It was a $22-something million hit for that school. It was just a stat that I saw on one of our lists. So, you know, we're fortunate to maintain, you know, provided the projections are accurate.
We'll know at the end of the year whether we maintain.
We'll know at the end of the year. And that's what makes it hard, but we know with the, you know, that's why I always use the term butts and seats. We know we have class size to keep track of. We can account for those. I'm hopeful with this new procedure with the family empowerment, if they are truly leaving our schools, we should be able to make those adjustments now because we'll know about them. It was just the difference between second and third calc where we don't know until the end. And that's hard to make an adjustment for. Normally, third calc is January-ish. I think it was like end of April this year. So it's kind of late to make a change for that, you know, 3/4 of the way through the second semester. So, but yeah, that's kind of where some of that impact is in total. To kind of move on a little bit here, what are we doing about it? Because obviously, you know, the students not showing up is one issue, but having expenditures higher than your revenue is the true problem. So, you know, fortunately, I want to say thanks to the board that they have approved a policy that keeps us way better off than a lot of districts, even surrounding districts. You know, and because of that, we're in a better position than them, and we've always tried to be in that because we were not at one time. So, a lot of our cost saving initiatives, you know, we're looking at reorganizing those administrative roles and streamlining departments where we can. We removed degree supplements for administrators, limiting the out-of-county travel and out-of-state travel to like required, you know, either by DOE, by statute, or for specific district initiatives. We implemented the hiring freeze at the district level, which is now starting at the school level. I believe that started this week, which you know, freezes things, allows us to make strategic moves rather than, you know, reactionary things later. And it doesn't affect, you know, current employees by having to let people go. You know, aligning with Florida class size averages. Most commonly, you may have heard it's the 10-day count thing. So we look at the 10-day count, that kind of sets us up for, you know, between 10-day and that first survey, you know, what are we doing there? You know, do we have class sizes of 2 kids? Well, that's not gonna work. You know, we have to make those adjustments because we may be low enrollment in one school and high enrollment in another school. We can move staff to another school so we're not affecting people like that. And then also maximizing our district print shop capabilities to kind of streamline and enhance stuff. You know, when we're spending upwards of $300,000, $400,000 a year on printing, we have a print shop that's able to do it at a much cheaper cost. We can use high volume devices, you know, that's protecting people and not systems or programs that we have. So those are all things that we're trying to do with the ultimate goal of maximizing student achievement. We want the A school district, you know, that's our biggest, you know, challenge in doing that. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but that's kind of, you know, where we're at right now and as we continue to go. So I wanted to bring up this here because I did have some questions from various people and the public and stuff on this. You know, we're showing a total reduction of positions. And where I think some context is important is the instruction category. These are all categories that the state requires us to report in. So that's why it's appropriate to kind of group them that way. Our finances are reported this way. For the instruction piece, that's inclusive of paraprofessionals, that's inclusive of teachers primarily. So those are direct in front of students. And it's kind of a mix and match type game that we have here. So for example, instructional media, you see that it went down by 3. We didn't actually lose 3 positions there. Those were 3 media pairs that were specific for media before. Well, now they moved into the instruction category because they could be used, you know, anywhere. Now the principals at the schools may still put them in the media center, but that might not be their sole spot. So, you know, there's all of those little back end moves that have to go there. But I wanted to highlight a couple of these here. You know, on the district level side, you know, we're looking at instruction and curriculum. Those are district level type positions. You know, C&I type positions here. Same with the staff training is primarily professional learning. Instructional related technology, you know, our district level positions. School administration, that's really anything to run the schoolhouse. So those primarily are, you know, we did reduce in certain areas assistant principals to align them with ratios of number of students. You know, sometimes the school enrollment decreased, but we didn't decrease the staff appropriately for that. So these are all things that have been in place prior to anything. You know, this is what Dr. McElroy and I worked on really since, I don't know, when I first got here. So that was a good 6-month project there. So just to highlight a couple of those areas, but you see increases in here too, you know, for various things like student transportation. We allocated additional bus driving positions because we're always in need of those types of positions. Operation of plan is primarily custodians, but point is all of these are kind of just a mix of various different positions that get grouped into these categories. That all ties back to here. What are those positions? And that resulted in a net decrease of us in true administrators of 1.27, teachers, and again, we didn't eliminate teaching positions. It was just the class size didn't the student counts at certain schools where they had normally had those positions there, weren't adjusted for necessarily, so, paraprofessionals are pretty self-explanatory, it's paraprofessionals. The reduction there is, we had a good group of 12th graders that had one-on-one paras that either the para was, they chose to leave, or, that there was no other one-on-one to assign them to. When the student leaves, especially for those one-on-one positions, we can't keep the person for that, cause that's how the funding is set up. Other certified instruction, those are the coaches, really anybody who has a teaching certificate that's not in a classroom, so that includes the media specialists as well. And other support personnel is basically anyone I haven't talked about, so that could be, bus drivers, bus attendants, front office workers, payroll clerks, any of those types of positions. But that's how we have to report those, and that's kind of what it breaks down to there. This slide's important, because truly, it matches our expenditures, right? 65% of our staff are instructional, with that being teachers, paraprofessionals, and certified instructional positions. 31% being the other support personnel, which again was the front office workers. That includes custodians, bus drivers, things like that. 3.8% being administrators, and then you guys make up 0.2% of our staff. So, that's where we get to all of those numbers from.
Marcus, just real quick, too, with administrators, a lot of times people say, well, you're heavy in administration and you should cut. We talked briefly in our meeting, and what are some of the averages of administrative positions in other districts?
So it ranges depending on size of the district. Typically, they're somewhere between 5 to 9%, but it really does range. A smaller district, you still need the same number of principals. Regardless, if you have, 1 school or 10 schools, you'll need 1 or 10 principals. So, smaller schools, their percentages tend to be higher, but for similar sized schools than ours, we're below what most of those others, specifically for the administrators. We're still on par with teachers and paras and things like that, but, we have additional supports at our schools, and I think that's important to make note of as part of our ratio-driven staffing plan, is to make sure that those supports are there, and we're not just loading administrators into the building, that we're adding, support personnel by paras or, those other types of, aides that we have in the buildings. So kind of to dive into the numbers of the budget, looking at a summary, I get asked, well, how do you get to $555 million of our total budget? And this is really what it breaks down to. So this is inclusive of all funds, and it's also inclusive of any fund balances that we have. That makes up our entire budget, 49% of which is our general fund. We have a special revenue fund, which at this point is some of the Title I and primarily food service, because that's a guarantee. It's also the only special revenue fund that we have that can actually have a fund balance in it. Most federal programs, it's a grant-based program, so you spend $1, you get $1. Food service has to be self-sufficient, and they have to maintain a certain fund balance. Debt service is what we took out bonds to build schools maybe 15-ish years ago. I forget specifically which schools. I know Lemon Bay was included in that, but I think there were 2 other schools that might have been part of that.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, and then that actually fall off unless we end up taking out debt again for another school at some point in the future. Another large chunk is our capital projects, so that's our capital, that's maintenance of all of our facilities and things like that. And then internal service is our health insurance fund, so that's inclusive of revenues, expenditures, and the fund balance that we have to maintain because we're self-insured.
And capital project also includes hurricane damage we've had over the last couple of years and work that's.
Correct, that's the fund that we're typically paying for out of that. We're fortunate to have a good size fund balance in there now to help, pay for deductibles or things that insurance doesn't cover. But we're also fortunate that we had insurance that paid for a lot of our repairs that we would have had to do at some point anyway. So it did, as bad as Ian was, in certain cases, it helped us out facility-wise.
Can I ask you a quick question? Where are we at with FEMA on reimbursement on this?
It's been obligated since April. So we're on step 3 of 26 or to receive the money. They do remind me once a
Are you
week.
being serious
because-
about the 26?
I'm 100%.
Like, that's a real
So,
number.
It is, so once it gets to the state and they do the obligation, there's like a 10-step process to obligate the funds on the state side. Then there's a 10-step process to disperse the funds. And every time there's an update, our contact lets us know, well, you're in step 4. So we just moved to step 4 yesterday, which is why I know the number.
Congratulations.
The other thing that's interesting to me though, because I've been watching the county meetings, is we didn't wait, after Ian, where we had 22 roofs that either needed to be replaced or repaired. We didn't wait, we couldn't wait, right, for FEMA to give us that money to get kids back in school. But when I watch the county meetings, they've put on hold, they had put on
Yeah.
hold a lot of projects because they said we're waiting for FEMA.
Yeah, so part of that is just, we were fortunate to build up funding available in our capital fund. Previous CFO Greg had a good, emergency fund for hurricanes essentially set aside there that we were able to immediately pay $17 million. Then insurance kicked in, because we have an insurance, like a really good group for our property casualty insurance, Wendy knows about, with Fizbit, and they were able to help with that insurance-based repair program. So some of the procurement pieces actually were pre-bid, and we were able to start right away rather than having to wait, which saves significant money because you're not just continually raining inside the building for the next 6 months or
Well, you gotta get
3
kids back
years
in school.
while you're waiting to
Yeah.
start those projects. So, that's definitely an important point to,
Yep.
to
And
make.
Greg had been through Charlie, so that was
Correct,
probably why we
yeah.
had that big emergency fund, because
Yeah,
he saw
I
what happens.
100% believe that, so.
Yeah.
So what does our revenue look like? So, easiest way to describe revenue, new money. So, obviously, this doesn't equal $550 million, but this is new money. So our local funding really consists of, and this is specific to the general fund. It consists of the $264 million locally, plus the transfers that go in there, because transfers are coming from capital. So the rest of those funds are the other sources there.
We would talk quickly a little more about transfers too. So typically, capital money can't be used for our general fund, so.
Yeah, you
paying
can't
teachers,
use it
right.
for
But there are
operational
allowable
purposes.
expenses that you're able to transfer over.
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically anything that's to maintain the building, anything that you would, you need to replace a roof. The workers who are involved with that's an allowable expenditure by statute. And that's something that we've done historically. I have a slide towards the end that kind of showcases that a little bit, but, so it's not an uncommon thing that we do.
Unfortunately, the legislature just increased it a little bit.
They did, yeah, so it used to be $175 per student for property casualty insurance. They increased that to $200 per student because obviously the property casualty insurance, went up. And if you think about it again, right, what's an allowable expenditure? Well, it's insuring the allowable expenditures, that's why, you pay it out of general and you can reimburse a portion of that from capital. So looking specifically at the general fund, just kind of broken down by percentages here. The majority of it from local sources. We have a very healthy tax base here. That's why the local percentage, it's about 90% local sources. Again, the local being the blue plus the transfers, which is from the capital side, which is again a local funding source. Looking at the unweighted FTE, this is what you were talking about a little bit earlier. So you can see our enrollment is fairly consistent the last couple years, hovering right around that 15,000. We had a small increase here of about 71 students. The biggest jump is really from the 1356 to the 1636 with scholarships, but you're right, that money doesn't come to us as of this count. The difference is if we maintain the exact same traditional students, but more scholarships go out, we're carving a little bit more out of the same pie that started, and we're not exactly sure how to do that. But again, hopefully with those forms that are coming, we'll know who those students are that are going into the empowerment program. Because we don't know if they left and went to another public school, we do know that. If they go to a private school, we do know that. But right now, that's how we ended up in the spot where we had double counting, is they were enrolled in family empowerment and also came into our district here, so.
So when I look at, so that number that you have under 24-25 is
Yep.
from the third calculation,
Correct.
okay? And when I look at Greg's presentation he did a year ago,
That would have been from the second calculation.
okay?
So,
And what's interesting is the only difference in the number of 24-25 is the scholarships. I mean, he has the exact same number
Correct.
for charter, virtual, and.
which is pretty uncommon up until last year, and that's, I think, what exposed to, the CFOs had a suspicion that we might have had some duplication going on, but there was no trail of it, cause they said, you know, everything kind of just went up proportionately before. But yeah, last year, if you look historically, that hasn't been the trend. Last year, the only change that occurred was the increase to empowerment based on what was funded, which is really interesting, cause that basically states that we didn't receive a new student and a student never left us. Everything stayed the exact same except that one. So, you know, it's hard to follow, and again, we can account for every one of the charter students, the virtual students, and the traditional students. It's just the scholarship ones that we're relying on the state numbers when they send them to us, either at the second calc or third calc, to make those adjustments later. But
Well, the other big difference here is when you sent us an email on July 3rd that broke it down for us.
Yeah.
And you had that charter students in 24-25 were 1,650, I'm gonna
Correct.
round up, but this chart shows 1,400,
so I can tell you what we had of actual charter school students.
1,650.
Correct, but that
The
doesn't
state is
always.
saying 1,400.
Correct, and
So
I'm
how-
hoping fourth calc will clear it up, but right now, like I said, I only have the third calc data, so this is as of what shows on third calc. Fourth calc may show different numbers, and that's where normally we have that information right now, but
Will that
we don't.
impact our fund balances revenues if it turns out that in the fourth calc there were?
No, because we've already
1,650?
paid the charter schools based on their actual FTE. Because the charter schools are on our same student information system platform, Focus, we know what they are, so we're able to accurately do that. Not every district, that's the case. I'm nervous for other districts that don't have that, but we have a pretty decent relationship with all of our charter schools, so we know how many students that they have. We provide other services for them, so we need those numbers to be accurate for the proportionate share for title services and stuff like that. Having two makes it easy to account for everybody, so that shouldn't affect ours. It's just at this point, we're pretty comfortable with all of our numbers. If the scholarship number changes again, that's really the only thing that could affect our fund balance.
So knowing that last year we had 1,650 charter students, we know that that number there, 1,458, is false.
Correct.
I mean, it's probably gonna end up, I'm gonna say, at least being 1,700 charter students.
My estimates that I have is right around 1,700 is what I've
And that
budgeted
won't-
for.
We don't need to worry about that as far as our budget goes?
So if you look in the budget book, and that's a good point, but I didn't put this in this slide, so there's a reserve for enrollment shortfall that I have set aside to account for that difference.
Okay,
It's the only spot I can stick it, cause we don't have a true expenditure yet. It's an estimated expenditure. We're required by statute to use the numbers the state gives us in second calc, so it's my way of making sure we're accounting for it without being able to account for it until the recalibration occurs.
and that's on our tentative budget book.
Yes, yep. So, part of how we're funding is the base student allocation, so it went up by $41.62. A portion of that, is applied to a value, called the cost, analysis, so, or the program cost rate. So, there was a change in some of the cost rates, some were negative, some were positive. So all of our K3 students, even though we had a $41 increase for the base student allocation, the program cost factor went down, which actually means we're receiving $7.19 less for each K through 3 student. That said, 4th through 8th, because they're the base level, they did receive the increase. 9 through 12, for the first time in a while, actually received an increase. But our ESOL, for every ESOL student we have, we went down $95, and for our ESE level 4 students, that went down as well. And our ESE level 4 and 5 students are primarily our Charlotte Harbor students. So while we do show a little bit, of an increase in the base student allocation, it does have a little bit more to it than just that surface level because it applies to those programs. So overall, if the number of students increases in those programs, we potentially could have more money in those groups, but, you know, that's kind of where it breaks down to, for that. Obviously, the CTE, was an increase this year, which historically has been pretty steady of where it was, but that, you know, again, is, good for us, cause we're looking at workforce education, the state's pushing workforce education, so we're in alignment on that, but unfortunately, some of the other areas didn't, you know, quite match that.
Marcus, why do you think that they decreased the ESC 4 and increased the 5? Are they recategorizing them into one?
So ESC level 4 are pretty much most of our students at Charlotte Harbor. The level 5 are the ones that are severely disabled, where they may have to have one-on-one medical professionals or equipment to help them function. Why they changed it, I don't know the methodology on how they come up with the program cost allocation. It's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty up in the air how they explain it. It's just set by the legislature is what the FEFP manual says. There's, I'm sure, a formula that somebody knows on how they've come up with these, and I think what it does is it weighs into what was the true cost to educate those individuals on a statewide level. The hard part is it really depends on your demographic for every single one of these. So, you know, this may be a perfect formula for another district and not for us. Or it might be a perfect formula for us and not another district. I don't know how they come up with that. That I know we have to do a program cost report each year that they analyze on a state level. And I'm assuming that factors into it pretty heavily, but I don't know otherwise beyond that, unfortunately. So this is how our funding is actually dispersed. So we take the unweighted FTE, so the physical bodies, we multiply it by those program cost factors, and that gets us to our weighted cost. So UFTE is the unweighted physical students, weighted is multiplied by the program cost factors. So while we see that we have an increase of students going in there, you know, from 17,817 to 18,233, there's actually a decrease in the total weighting. And that's a really hard calculation to come up with, because you have third grade that goes to fourth grade, so they're getting the increase, or they're actually getting a decrease there because the cost factor is less. You have incoming kindergartners, so when kindergartners are down, they're a higher cost factor, and you know that if they're down, your total weight is gonna go down proportionately. So that's one of those where you actually have to look at like per school, per student on everything. So, but the easiest thing to compare is what was the difference between weighted, what was the difference between unweighted, and kind of use those relationally. In theory, if your weighted students or unweighted students are going up, more than likely your weighted should be going up, but that's not always the case, because we can't really predict that, oh, they're gonna be here. The incoming kindergartners are kind of what sets it. So if you have a really large kindergarten class, that number follows, you know, typically there. And right now, our kindergarten numbers are down. So that is contributing to our total weighted FTE, because that's the weighted funded FTE. At the end of the day, you take that 19,408 and you multiply that by your base student allocation. That's what our base student allocation will be funded at.
And that includes scholarship numbers.
Correct.
Those
Yeah,
numbers.
so
Okay. You know, one thing I was looking at when you said the $2 million in additional scholarship funding, and then I was multiplying that out by approximately 200 students,
Yeah.
scholarship students, then that comes like $10,000 a student.
Yeah.
And as probably most people know, is that the scholarship students, they do get the weights for the category 4 and 5
correct,
for the unique abilities.
correct.
And so I was wondering if a higher percentage of students who are taking those scholarships are the UA scholarships. I think previously you told me you can't tell like how many scholarships are ES
Yeah, they started
and how
adding
many are
it.
UA.
Yeah, they started adding it to the FEFP the last year and this year for sure. But what we can't tell is what the breakdown, like we can do it by the UA and UE, but the breakdown for the actual programs they're in to figure out the grade levels, that's now, there's an entire page that actually has that on there this year, all condensed in one spot, so we don't have to take the total number and subtract here and subtract here and subtract here and try and work it out. So they're trying to be a little more transparent about how we can calculate that. There is a way to make a best guess on older years and figure it out, but it might not always be 100% accurate because we don't know exactly what program cost necessarily that each of those are at in the past. The last 2 years, we do have that. I did take a look at that, but I didn't actually calculate the percentages. The level 4 and 5s are pretty low and they remained consistent between the last couple years. The other ones I didn't really look at, so I don't think that it was from the empowerment for those ESE level 4 and 5. There's zero empowerment on the ESOL one, I did notice that, which I think that would be hard to provide those services, since we're kind of the only organization that can provide those services, and we provide those services for the charter schools and the private schools already, so I think they're a little bit more limited on that, but that is a good comparison to look at, and now that data is a little more condensed and kind of in one spot, I think it's a lot easier to follow. It's just when you're comparing it to previous years, you have to do all the math to get the starting point, prior to last year,
The
so.
important thing on those scholarships is, the truth is, we haven't had, I think I can think of like one private school that's moved into the area that has this kind of a hybrid model. Maybe
Correct.
there's two, there's one out by Babcock, there's another one here in town. But really, the growth in scholarships, I believe, is students who are homeschooled, that personal
Correct.
education plan.
Correct, yeah, and there's something that's going to the board tonight, for consideration too, is we now have the ability through statute to, when those students need our services, we can act as a provider of those services and receive some of that funding. Whereas before, if they needed those services, we provided them, we just didn't have any funding for it. So there is a mechanism for that now that's up for consideration by the board tonight. So all of this here kind of just summarizes what the total funding per unweighted FTE. Because of the program cost factors, it's really difficult to keep track of. The easiest way to, and I think the most accurate way to fairly compare year over year is the physical students. So the physical bodies are what we're comparing here, and we look at the total dollar amounts by physical student, regardless of if they're scholarship or traditional student or virtual or whatever it is. These are what our historical trends are. So you can see they go up and down year over year. This is a year where there was a good sized jump between 24 to 25 in funding, but this year it's back down. So overall, when you take all the FEFP and divide it by the number of actual students, we're actually looking at about $150 or 7% decrease per student year over year. While the dollars may be more, it's all relative.
So, I was comparing this chart that you have there with last year's chart.
Correct.
And what I noticed is that the numbers are the same all the way through 21, 22. But
Okay.
then starting in 22, 23, so for example, in 22, 23, last year's chart showed UWFTE, the dollars, 92.47. You have 85.86.
Okay.
And then 24, 25, or 23, 24, last year showed 88.47, and you have 9,113. And then 24, 25 was 94.90, and you're showing 98.06.
So I can't explain how the numbers were presented last year because I wasn't here. I can tell you how I calculated these ones, and I took the fourth calc of every single one of these years, which is our final calibration number that we use. I'm not sure what number was used last year, but if you look at the fourth calc for each one of these years, that's what we should be utilizing, because that's the total received revenues reconciled. So I'm not sure why they would be different. They shouldn't be, because that.
So the 24, 25, the 98.06, that's actually the third calc. 'cause we
Correct,
don't
that's
have
the
it
only one,
yet,
yeah.
right? And then 25, 26 is the second calc.
Which
Because
is
that's
the
what you have.
predictive one, yes.
Um,
So these numbers, the 24, 25 and 25, 26, if I do this again next year, the 24, 25, assuming we get the fourth calc, should have whatever the fourth calc numbers are. The 25, 26 should have the fourth calc for this year. And then the 26, 27 would be the second calc again for the future going forward.
So in 24, 25, from the second calc to the third calc, we went from 9490 to 9806.
Correct.
Do you know why? Why did we receive so much more funding between the second and the third last year?
I'm not sure. It's just the total FEFP. Now, part of it is the local discretionary portion that we have. Some of that turns into interest that is earned, that counts towards revenue. It's a small part, and I doubt that can make up the difference. But really, it should be the increase in revenue and the increase in the total number of unweighted FTE, because that's all it is. The difference is I don't believe that the unweighted FTE changed all that much between the two, because only the scholarships moved this year in that third calc, which is why I was really hopeful for the fourth calc, because I don't think that it necessarily jumped that high, but this is just the data that I have at this time.
And you think that 9806 could go down then?
I think it could go down, because remember, the third calc only has the data from survey 2, which is in October. We still don't have the February survey data. That's normally part of fourth calc. So
Okay.
if we lost students somewhere or gained students elsewhere, I don't know what that's gonna do. I would assume that the total dollar per student will go down if our student enrollment grew. If it went down, it would go up. But because only one line changed, the
So this
denominator
shows a
stayed essentially.
decrease, the dollars per UWFTE is showing a decrease from
For-
last
for
year to
this
this
year,
year, but when we
correct.
get to fourth calc,
It could
That
potentially,
could
I'm
be
sure it's going to
increased.
change, I just don't know which way. So,
okay.
unfortunately, it's a little bit unprecedented, because normally we have that data, we just don't have it, so we're using what our
And it is very
nodes
confusing.
that we have, it is, well, it's confusing to begin with.
Yeah.
But when you don't have the same things to compare from year to year, it's even more confusing. So, we talked about the local versus state dollars. You can see that 20.5% of us, our FEFP funding comes from state dollars, which is inclusive of our empowerment students as well, because that's part of the whole formula. Mostly, 79% is our local funding here at Charlotte. So how does that break down as kind of a big picture? About 74.2% is salaries and benefits, so that's people. Purchase services is the next largest category. That includes charter school payments, contracts like school resource officers with the sheriff's office and Punta Gorda PD, as well as like ESE contracted employees. And our property insurance goes into there as well. Of that big chunk, I just did the math real quick, 71% of the 17% of purchase services is basically those four things. About 17 million is charters, 3 million to the SROs for the sheriff's office and the PD, 4 million for ESC contractors, and about 5 million for insurance.
When you say the property insurance, are you including the general
Property,
liability?
casualty, everything,
Okay,
yep.
all right.
Insurance in general.
Okay.
The whole dollar.
Yep. So another way that we can look at expenditures is by the function. This corresponds directly with that first chart with the personnel where we had instruction and everything like that. So direct in front of students instruction, we're looking at 57.74, so almost 58% of our direct instruction. That includes teachers, paras, but it also includes textbooks. It also includes payment to charter schools and things like that. Classroom supplies, that all gets lumped into there. And then we have a variety of small things there. Really, the next biggest thing is the operation of plant, which is gonna include all of our utilities. That'll include property and casualty insurance again in it. And it'll also include all of our custodial staff. So those are really our two largest areas. Anything under 1% is, broken out over off to the side, but that's kind of how all of our expenditures line up. And then kind of the final way to look at it is by the location type. So elementary schools, we have the most of them, makes the most sense that we have the most expenditures going there at 26%. But the next largest one is departments, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit on that. Included in there is the ESE department, which is our largest chunk of that at about $10 million or 22-ish% of that piece of the pie. The next largest is transportation at about $10 million. So while it seems that we have a lot of departmental spending, it's still for the direct instruction of students in some cases. That's why it's kind of important to talk about all of these areas, and when you look at it different ways, I think sometimes people forget that, you know, the support departments for ESE and for transportation, well, if we're not busing the kids here, can't really teach them, you know, those types of things. And then the next thing is the student services department is in there too, which is our social workers and psychologists and things like that. So that's all part of there, including our guardians and everything. That's all part of the department budgets as well. The special allocations primarily makes up our substitute teachers, so we know we're gonna have to have subs for, you know, when there's absences. Textbooks goes into there, supplements, those types of things are budgeted at the special allocation level.
So that's all FEFP,
No, this is total general fund
okay.
in this case.
So,
Which-
you know, I noticed there's
Which
no.
would be inclusive of FEFP and would also be inclusive of referendum and any other local
And like
sources.
the 0.748,
Correct, discretionary, which that's actually part of the FEFP total.
okay.
Yep.
But there's no slice of the pie for scholarships there.
Correct.
So you know exactly what our actual FEFP dollars are for all of our traditional schools and charter schools and each department.
Yep, at the beginning of the year we do, yes.
And you're allocating that because you know how much revenue you're getting for each of those things.
Correct.
Okay,
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
With the exception of that one last payment we didn't get last year. That's what makes it difficult if nothing else changes. We don't see any changes internal, there's no, you know, changes between second and third calc. When the scholarships change and we receive less of the state money, cause you know, it's proportional, we get 20% from the state and 79% or whatever from local. We don't have the chance to adjust for that when we get the third calc really late, but also, you know,
but this year you put in a category to, mostly for charter school, is it for charter schools and?
Yeah, there's two different ones, so there's one for enrollment shortfall, there's also one for, you know, unexpected, like revenue shortfalls, which that's more of the FES one.
Okay.
But it's a guess, I mean, if you go back historically and see like from year to year, on the chart you referenced last year, it was only an increase of 100 students in it. If you look at what we budgeted from last year to this year, the second or third calc was 300 students, and then now it's another 300, so it's kind of a guess as to how many truly we end up with.
Little extra categories you put in there are in addition to our 10% unassigned balance.
Correct, so like, for example, if we don't use those specific reserves, that falls into the unassigned category to start next year.
Okay.
So if we're doing our jobs and we're able to accurately measure and keep track of those and reduce expenditures as things change, and we never touch those reserves for those, you know, unforeseen things, then that helps us.
Increases our general.
So can I ask you a question? You've got that nice pie chart there. Is it possible to do a sheet in the budget for future, or like maybe when we approve the final budget in August, that shows those numbers? So basically,
amounts in
yeah,
addition
how
to
much
that.
you've got in revenue
So there is,
for the elementary.
yeah, there's actually a sheet, there's four separate pages in the budget book already that breaks it down, with actual dollar amounts. This just breaks it down to those corresponding percentages.
So it has, I think we have one sheet says elementary schools.
Correct, and it breaks down even per elementary school within that sheet as well.
And it shows revenue and expense. Is it
not in a
possible?
chart. I mean, it's just in a chart, not in a pie. Yeah.
It'll just show expenditures, but yeah.
But I guess that would be my question. The reason I'm asking is I did look at another like-sized school district.
Okay.
And what they do, because I was talking to this person about how confused I was about this scholarship funding and asking them how they do it. And so what they do is they have a sheet in their budget book where, for the revenues, they only show the revenues for their students and charter students, right? So they don't show the revenues for any projected scholarship. And then they break it down into elementary, middle, just like that, all the pieces of the pie for expenditures. And so then you see what the true revenue is
Sure.
and what the true expenditure is and what the balance, you know, if you have a plus or minus on the balance. Is it possible to do that?
We could probably do that. We do need to show the total FEFP somewhere in
Right,
that
right,
document
right,
for audit purposes.
But I think for us, this, like for me anyway, this would be very helpful because that sheet that has the scholarships in it, you can just see, I cannot comprehend that. Because it's like, you can't tell me how much of that revenue is.
Well, you have to look here and then compare it over here and, yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard, it's
so if
hard to follow.
and really, what do I wanna say? I don't wanna say I don't care about the scholarships, I really don't. What I wanna know is how much money are we getting for our students, plus the charters? And how much money are we spending on our students and the charters? And if I subtract that, the second number from the first number, am I plus or minus?
Except you can't always subtract that because we've got more students than we're getting paid for from the empowerment. There were 200 extra kids last year.
Ish.
So that number can never be accurate the way they're doing the numbers.
Well, if I could get this, it would be very helpful,
Okay.
to me. To
Yeah,
me, maybe not to anybody else, but to me, I just wanna know at
I
the end of
think
the day
it's
for
something
my
we could
students.
probably look at calculating and doing. At the end of the day, we're removing them there. You know, on that first page, I've taken out the scholarships as budgeted and taken out the state funded discretionary as budgeted this year. So that very bottom number should be our total revenues, but I don't have it broken down by like FEFP plus other local sources because the reporting doesn't, we don't have to report it that way, so we don't break it down that way, but I can see how that would be helpful, so.
I'm gonna give you the copy of the one that I pulled from another like-sized district, just so you can see how they do it. This would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
Okay. So then on this other slide here, for the referendum, I think it's important to talk about, you know, we're in a very good and unique position because we have a referendum. You know, that's fortunately, our property taxes did end up going up. Based on our first one, we thought it was gonna go down, but it didn't. That's why they have the tentative and changes, but, so we thought it was gonna go down. It actually went up a little bit. So, we have all of these different categories, but again, our competitive salaries and benefits continues to be, the biggest, you know, piece and we checked this morning, we believe we're one of 5 districts that have actually given raises this year, statewide. Some of those did multiple year contracts last year, which is why they did them. Other districts, you know, they were able to give raises, but, you know, the referendum's a big contributing part of that. You know, this shows historically how we've been able to, you know, continue to maintain, you know, our raises here.
And while talking about that, I just wanna mention, because we do have our union here and our HR and our finance, and listening to Governor DeSantis's message, I think it was yesterday or the day before he did the press conference, I just wanna say thank you for working so hard. We are in a great position as far as having agreements and moving forward for this year. It sounds like way ahead of a lot of other districts, so just wanted to acknowledge that publicly, thank you.
Thank you as well.
Not sure why we're gonna turn off in 12 seconds.
Let's not do that.
It says it's tired of
We'll do
hearing.
that later. It's tired of listening to me talk. So, this last slide here is a slide that we'll see, you know, year to year to kind of compare our fund balances. And, the gray bar at the very top represents either an increase or decrease to fund balance. Then we also have the starting and the ending fund balance. The starting fund balance in blue with the ending fund balance being in the gold color. And if we look at this, you know, we're showing that we're expecting to have a shortage of 9.57 million, which is what we talked about earlier. But I want to point out that in 24-25, we had originally approved a budget that was 17-ish million short. And throughout the year, we were able to make strategic decisions, knowing that, you know, obviously our expenditures were too much. What can we make changes that make sense for us to continue to get towards that A, and still able to, you know, get out of the deficit that we're in. So through a variety of different changes and positions and not filling positions throughout the year in certain areas as we were developing the staffing plan, and just not buying stuff is the easiest way for me to categorize it. You know, we were able to shrink that deficit from 17 to about 5.6. That said, some of that did come from, we did receive additional funding in certain areas, but that wasn't expected at the time. So it's hard to predict what some of those are gonna be in the future. So we are conscious of that. We're making those decisions as we go. We don't wanna just flip off a light switch and have all the decisions done. That, you know, taking the strategy to pinpoint and play the chess moves of what needs to be done, that's the betterment of our students is what we've been doing this last year and what we want to continue doing going forward. Very briefly on the capital fund, we're anticipating generating about $55.4 million in new funding for this upcoming year. That's about a 3% increase from last year. if you notice, there was a large jump there in 21-22 to 22-23, and consistently after that, it's been about 13%. This is the first year where we're going back to the historical average of about 3 to 5%. Historically, between like 2013 till 2020, it was anywhere from 3 to 5%. I think the average was like 3.6 or something like that. So we're kind of going back to averages. Where that translates to is what are our projects, that we have budgeted for. So the new construction piece is the part that's not part necessarily just our local capital dollars. We do have some state appropriated funds for the airport hangar and things like that. That's mostly where that new construction piece is. But you can see the transfers on the left-hand side have been pretty consistent, even though our property values have gone up. So proportionally, we haven't touched that because statute limits on what you can and can't do with it. Furniture and equipment, and then obviously facility maintenance and repair projects are the large chunk. They're grouped into those categories because those are the only allowable categories by statute. So they're very broad, but if you think about it, most of the facility repair and maintenance is, what exactly it sounds, it's facility repair and maintenance. And once again, for anybody watching or listening, tentative budget hearing is tonight at 5:30.
Do we have any, I'm sure I'm asking a foolish question here, do we have any idea when the fourth calc is coming?
I've been told that it's coming.
You're supposed to have it like 2 weeks
Will
ago.
it come before our August 12 final budget?
I haven't been told one way or the other.
So my only ask, knowing that we're in the situation that we're in here, where we're very closely monitoring student counts and the reserve, is if when we have our meetings, following whenever these calculations are coming out, so if we have the fourth calc by August 12, I'd like it if at our workshop, if you can give us an update with that fourth calc, how that has impacted us on the budget. And then after we have the 10-day count of students in August, if at our September meeting, you can let us know how that's impacting us, and just kind of keep that as part of our district updates.
If that's the pleasure of the board, we'll be happy to do that.
Well, especially with all the flexibilities going on, we're not getting the information till we're halfway into the next season. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to start the season with not knowing the end of last one.
And I'll just say, I really appreciate you answering all of my questions. I know I had a lot, but I do, as I mentioned in my statement last week, this is one of the 3 very important things this board does. In my time on the board, we've never had a budget workshop like this. And I think it really is important that we together really have a good understanding of this. And I feel like sitting here at the workshop table and being able to ask these questions, I have a much deeper understanding than sitting at the dais and just watching the presentation.
Hopefully I can make it clearer and less confusing.
Well, I
But-
think if you can do that,
Yeah.
the budget in that format, that'll be very helpful, because we'll just take out the scholarships out of the, it'll be one more way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah, I want to kind of echo some of what Kim had to say. I spent more time with you going over the budget this year than I think the last 2 years combined with Greg. Like, I really appreciate the amount of time, how thoroughly you answered my questions. I mean, I have a much better understanding where we are, where we're going, because of your ability to sit down and explain things. So I just want to say thank you so much. I also want to talk briefly, because I've had people ask, well, why don't you just raise the mills? Like, if you guys are struggling financially, the county's talking about keeping the mills the same, or, do we increase them? And we don't have that ability. So I think it's really important for the public to understand that the state tells us what our mills will be. They tell us what our funding is going to be. And so we have to play within those parameters, and it's very important. And that's why this understanding and having this explanation for everybody is so important, to understand we don't get to just decide, we want more money, so let's increase. If we want it, we have to go to the public and ask for a vote. And that's why Yes for Success in our referendum.
And we are taking advantage fully of what's allowable, which is 1 mil additional of operating revenue. We have that.
And I would say it forces us, what I would say is that it forces us to be responsible and to live within our means.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope we would be without them forcing us to.
Well, I will just say, my experience watching government entities across the state, if the government can keep your mills the same and collect the huge increase in property values, they will.
And
They will never volunteer to spend less money.
And I also, I mean, just continue with that. I've been watching other districts in their budget meetings, just to kind of get a feel for things. And the transparency that we've had in this district to be upfront with our community about what's going on, I really appreciate that too. Some districts you watch and they're kind of skirting around some issues, and I just appreciate how forthcoming we have been. So thank you to both of you.
And you also took extra time with me and got down to my level, so. The fact that you.
What level
is that, Bob?
Had to get down there. We were talking bushels of corn.
You know, somebody explained it to me like as if, you know, they said, imagine that you have, and I thought that was a good way of explaining it. Imagine you have a chain link fence around Charlotte County, and each one of those kids in your county has a little bag of cash, okay? And say, like one day their little bag of cash, they're going to Sally Jones, but now mom decided to homeschool, and they're taking that bag of cash to their home.
Yeah, but then they come back to school and we don't get paid for it.
Well, and there's a difference, you know, what was explained to me, this was kind of like an eye-opener, what was explained to me is if all the students are within that chain link fence and they're just moving around within that chain link fence, things don't really change that much. But what can really make a big difference is if after those counts have been taken, so say after the February count has been taken, a student, say they move here from Michigan, say they move here just because of that choice scholarship and they move inside of our chain link, and they take a scholarship, that is not accounted for.
Correct. And that's one thing that is different with the scholarships. They become eligible immediately. If they show up at our door, we don't, we educate them.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Looking forward to your presentation tonight.
And then you're going on vacation or?
One day. I'll take it though.
I'm glad you keep up with all the nuances that probably come across your desk daily.
I have a good team of people that help me, so.
I do want to mention, I'm glad you pointed out the fact that this district was starting to look at strategic moves at the beginning of last year, so that we can kind of come to balance here and stuff like that. So really, the strategic moves have been to keep the focus on the students, student learning, student support. So I'm glad those things have started at the beginning of last year, because we'll continue to make those strategic moves for our long-term strategic plan, but also sustainability. So I appreciate all the work and focus on that. So.
I guess I'd like to leave that reserve more comfortable for future members than it was when we came aboard.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we need a break before we go on, or is everybody good to go?
I'm good, yeah.
Good. Okay, then we'll move to policies. I think it's next.
Yeah, I did ask about that conservation, Charlotte. You know, she scared me when she said 2 mils. I was like, it's 0.2. If they do it, they may not do it, and if they do it, it's 0.2. 0.2.
That's a big
Let's
difference.
hope
That's a
they-
big difference.
I mean, the fourth one on the ballot would be just, 3 is going to be significant.
As I said, if governments can get and spend more money, they will. Except
Okay.
for us.
Hey, it's just like business, I feel like getting more.
Web content, apps and services.
Dr. McElroy?
Dr. McElroy, would you like to join us?
Mr. Allen back up, so.
Why did you leave?
I don't know. I didn't know I was first.
Well, you have two heads.
Thank you.
He's first on the number order, so it's actually a shared policy with him and Claudette Smith. So we wanted to look at the website, policy 7540.02.
Normally have it pulled up already, but I
Would you
didn't
like
do
to-
that. I'll take a paper copy today.
We just had some, this was not a Neola recommendation, this was from us. We pulled up the prior Neola recommendation and just made some adjustments to how it was entered.
Any questions of Dr. McElroy or Marcus on this one? See that, we brought you up here.
All right.
All right.
Now you can drink your water.
All right, I'm okay with that.
Thank you. All right, if you, I would like to call Mr. Conti and Mr. Harvey up we'll start with policy 8670, school bus and district vehicle maintenance program.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. And you too, Jeff.
Oh, come on.
This policy had not been updated since 2005, so it was one that we needed to bring forward and make some adjustments to, and I'll let Mr. Conti speak to some of those, or.
So these are also not Neola policies, we were just going through and reviewing them, and in part of our cost savings and for our insurance credits that Marcus was talking about, we're bringing all of our district vehicles under one umbrella, the white fleet and the yellow school bus. So that's all we did in 8670 was we had clarified that and called it, instead of school bus, district vehicle. That encompasses vans and every other vehicle that we do maintenance on.
Any questions on that
More
one?
for housekeeping than any of the.
Yes, it really is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
8670.01, the school bus replacement.
So along those same veins, we classified it, instead of just school bus replacement, we had no white fleet replacement plan. So this is now encompassing the white fleet, so that we can keep those fresh, keep them looking good, and it just gives us a parameter. Because we did it, school buses, it was 13 years or 250,000 miles. We didn't have anything for the white fleet, and we had some vehicles that were 2004. Some of them had, over 100,000 miles on them. So now this kind of gives us, we need to start looking at procuring vehicles.
We use the word may, so it doesn't lock us in.
Right,
Right.
doesn't lock us in.
Budget issues or something, so.
Thank you.
Any questions?
We like mays rather than shalls.
I
You
know,
like me.
I know you do, and I know all of you do, so that's why we made sure we had May in there.
All right, then.
All right, thank you.
All right. Here. What's that? All right, FSBA advocacy representative.
What about district updates? Do we have any of those? No?
There were any.
Okay.
I apologize.
Can I just say one thing about the advocacy representative? Cause I did listen to our meeting yesterday, FSBA had a webinar.
Can you guys also, I just didn't have a chance to get on to it too. Okay, because they're doing another one next week.
Yes, and there's, I think they're gonna send out a recording too.
Okay, good.
But what I would say is, and this kind of feeds into this whole conversation about funding and scholarships, I guess I'll start by saying that one of the interesting things about it is they talked about a bill that did not pass. I believe it was HB 5101, I think is the number. And there were some legislators who attempted to bring some clarity to this whole scholarship issue by requiring that every student have a unique identification number, including the scholarship students, so that, how Marcus was talking about how we have that for the charter school students, to make it so we would have that for the scholarship students also. The bill also required that the money be paid out 10 times a year, so that there'd be like if people are moving back and forth, that it wouldn't be a full quarter of losing that money. And so my ask for whoever's gonna be the advocacy representative, in the past, when I was an officer, or like when Wendy was an officer, that gave us an extra seat on the legislative committee and on the advocacy committee. Now that we don't have anybody who's an officer, we would potentially be losing that seat on legislative. So what I would ask is if somebody wants to serve as the advocacy representative, if they also put their name in to sit on the legislative committee, so that we can have some input on what FSBA's platform is, and if they decide to take up as a platform item, bringing some clarity to that scholarship issue. Because we're not the size district to hire a lobbyist to engage in policymaking with our legislators, so we use FSBA to do that. So I would just ask that whoever's advocacy, that they, agree to have a seat in that committee.
And again, the consortium as well can add to that and try to direct that way as far as advocacy that way, I think. So we can try to utilize both tools.
Yeah, I know, when I was advocacy rep before, I sat on legislative as well, so I thought it was very informative, because it's just a little more in-depth.
And it was good to have both of us, cause then we get 2 votes. Yeah, so definitely I wanna make sure we have at least
At
one
least
vote.
one, okay. Are you advocacy right now?
Yes, and I would be happy to relinquish that.
All right, now that I said what I'm looking for, he just wanted.
Well, I was on both too, so, I think, obviously every year is different, so it's a good experience either way, so, I would be happy to, defer to anyone else, for that.
You're on the what?
I'm on FSBA board, so.
Okay. Well, it sounds like Karen might.
There's a
be-
Bob Seeger at the table too, so.
Bob's our Greater Florida
Yeah,
person.
he's
Alright.
a consortium person.
I mean,
To have the opportunity to serve again as advocacy rep, and I will be happy to sit on legislative as well then, that's fine.
Good, thank you for doing that.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Oh, we need an alternate.
If you want, I can be you want to be the alternate, John?
Sure.
For advocacy?
I'll be the alternate.
I can't make any meetings, so. Okay,
For both.
good plan.
I like it.
Okay, strategic plan update. Mark, got anything with that?
Yes, so at this, so I served on the district steering committee for the strategic plan for this past year. So a conversation with Mark is, you know, it would be a good seat for someone to do for this year as we continue to grow in our strategic plan and look at making adjustments and stuff like that, so.
We meet quarterly, and we're expanding the committee this year to include parents, to include students, so it'll be more comprehensive, more community members. So I think that's a really good idea. It gave the chair an opportunity to participate and see and hear kind of how our evolution is going. You get the quarterly updates at our workshops, but it's a different layer. So if there's someone else that would like to join us this year, I think that would be fantastic.
Well, you know, John just got rid of one job, I think we should keep this.
But I think the purpose was to, for
Look at him,
another.
look at him pivot.
When do we talk about board
look,
assignments?
another-
Just kidding.
And you,
Thank you.
it's a great committee, it's, you know, like Mark said, it's, you know, community members are involved, and they're fully engaged in the strategic plan, so.
Okay.
Along those lines, I do have every intention to have our student advisory committee as well. So we'll meet quarterly as well, 4 times a year. And so when we start those back up, I'd love to have you all kind of rotate through and hear what our students have to say. That's extremely powerful.
Are you doing
Always
middle
happy
schools
to
again?
hear
We'll do middle schools again, and if you would like to sit in on those, that was as eye-opening as our high school students.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I learned is that the getting rid of the cell phone, that they were just bringing burner phones, that they didn't care if the burner phone got taken. They're always like one step ahead of us, 10 steps.
They're so smart.
Yeah,
Okay,
great insight.
all right, thank you. Baker policy update?
We didn't have a meeting in July,
Okay.
so no update on that.
And any need for a tentative workshop? Hearing none, back to you, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate it, Vice Chair Seeger. I do want to bring up, just as a little update, a few months ago, we talked about transitioning to the new diligent, which eventually we will have to make that transition. So Chris has been pretty good about communicating with the company. The issue right now is our board docs is not really integrated into the new diligent. So at this time, we're gonna pause the transition until diligent can make that smooth transition. So just kind of wanted to update you on that. So the new program diligent looks really good. It's not integrated in current board docs right now.
Because we don't want to lose everything that we have in there.
Correct.
That would be fun.
All right, without any additional things on the agenda, I would call the meeting to end at this time.